Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast talking Auburn and Arkansas football. Go ahead and like this video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Man, I got a special guest here on tonight. We got Kyle Sutherland here. He's Tex Hogs. He has a podcast for Arkansas football. Kyle, go ahead and introduce yourself to the crowd here tonight.
Yeah, like you said, my name's Kyle Sutherland, and I've been in Texas for about 3 years now. I was born and raised just north of Little Rock in a little town called Sherwood, and started producing content a little bit on Facebook here and there right before I moved to San Antonio in February of 2017. And right after Chad Morris got hired, obviously with his Texas connections, another buddy of mine from college that's in Dallas decided that we were going to start our own podcast and Twitter page and all that. And he still helps me with it. It's mainly been me lately, but that's pretty much how it started. We started, I believe, in June of 2018, so it's been going a little over a year now. And here we are, and I'm still in San Antonio at the moment.
San Antonio, so hence the name Tex Hogs. You're down in Texas talking Arkansas football. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, Arkansas had the opportunity to head down into Jerry World to take on Texas A&M. In a very close matchup, and we're talking 4 points, and this Auburn-Arkansas game could be a totally different situation. Let's go ahead and talk about that Texas A&M and Arkansas game and how it has impacted Arkansas up to this point.
Well, it's always been a really tough measuring stick because that game, excluding 2016, so if you go from 2014 until this game that just ended a couple of weeks ago, it's always ended within a touchdown, and most of them have gone into overtime. 2016 was a little bit worse. Texas A&M put it on them pretty hard, but last year they played really, really tough against them too. They gave up a touchdown to a kickoff at the beginning of the game, and they ended up losing 24-17. So that was when we really kind of started to figure out, okay, they had just lost to North Texas. They had just lost to Colorado State. So maybe they're going to turn the corner here. And, of course, they go and play Auburn, and that score was a little bit misleading. Of course, Auburn won pretty handedly, but that was mainly because Arkansas just played horrible special teams, or Auburn played really good special teams, however you want to look at it. And also they played a little bit better defense. And so I was actually excluding special teams, I was excited with the way that they played against Auburn, just the way that they showed fight, the way that they had showed it against A&M. But then as the season progressed, it's like they just let go of the rope. And so, I always try to be positive, but at the same time, I'm realistic. I'm not 100%, especially after seeing them against Kentucky and then losing to San Jose State. I'm not expecting much against Auburn because that's a really good team that's coming into Fayetteville, but there's a lot on the line. Chad Morris and Gus Malzahn are really good friends. John Chavis has always done pretty well against Gus Malzahn offenses. 4 of Gus's worst performances out of, I think, the 14 times or so that they played each other, or maybe not quite that many, but around that. I know that 4 of Gus's performances all time, of his worst performances, were against the John Chavis defense. So there's a lot of stats that you can point to, but at the end of the day, the Razorbacks just have to get to the point where they're gonna figure out that, hey, we've got to play a full 4 quarters, and this is a really good team that we got coming in here, so we got to be ready from the get-go.
We're talking about 8-point differential between this particular game against Auburn actually being relevant. You know, you talk about a 4-point loss to Texas A&M and a 4-point loss, obviously, to Kentucky. And the trajectory of Arkansas football moving forward, you know, you talk about 4 points right now that could have Arkansas relevant at this point. And, you know, I look around and I look at the Arkansas Razorback fan base. I look at everyone who's following Arkansas, and they're scratching their heads as to what is going on with this particular program. You talk about Chad Morris coming off a 2-10 record in 2018, and things don't seem to be getting better in 2019. Tell me about the recruiting efforts with Arkansas that will kind of right the ship for Arkansas moving forward.
Well, last year, I thought that Chad did maybe arguably the best job in the entire nation of the way that he recruited. He had the 23rd recruiting class after a 2-10 record. So being able to bring those guys in that he did. Now, of course, one of them left the program on Monday, Devin Bush, who was a defensive back out of Edna Carr High School in New Orleans. he entered the transfer portal. But there was just so many guys that are crucial to this year's team. You got Traylon Burks, Trey Knox. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Greg Brooks on defense, and most reasonable fans knew that it's going to take at least 2, possibly 3 three really solid recruiting classes to get this ship afloat again. But I think what most people are really upset about now, including myself, I was saying all offseason and in fall camp this was going to be a 5-win team at max. I just didn't see. I thought that was going to be the ceiling. And I think what really just getting to me right now is you got both your quarterbacks from last year, Cole Kelly and Ty Story, transfer out. You bring in Ben Hicks, that's played in your system for 3 years, did pretty well. He took a lot of chances. He threw a good bit of interceptions, but also had a good number of stats. I think he passed for like 9,000 yards in his time at SMU.
Okay.
And then also you bring in Nick Starkel from A&M, a guy that probably could have started. Kellen Mond just gets the nod over him. And here we are 6 games into the season. So you played half your season already and you still don't know who your guy is. And Chad still hasn't named a starter. He even said today that he might not name him until game time. So that's really worrisome to me, is you bring in guys that you handpicked yourself from transfers, and you still just can't get it going. And that's really, really worrisome to me.
We're talking about the last game against Kentucky. You're talking about 2 quarterbacks, Ben Hicks and Nick Starkel. I think those guys combined for maybe 150 yards between the two of them in an abysmal performance against Kentucky where they had the game in hand. You talk about a situation where they could win their first conference, win the first conference game in a very surmountable amount of time. And you just let a game like Kentucky slip away from you. What does that do? Because from what I understand is that there was even a recruit that decommitted because of that particular game. Tell me a little bit about that.
So yeah, I'll start with the recruit, Tykeus Crawford. He's 172nd ranked player overall in the 2020 class.
My goodness.
It hurts real bad. I mean, he was our top recruit for 2020 out of Carthage, Texas, on the east part of the state. That's one of our coaches was there in that area, coached for years and years, won multiple state championships. So he's got a pipeline to that area to get some guys. And we got some from the 2019 class, and there's a couple of committed as of now for the 2020 class. But yeah, I think it was actually like around 120 yards, because I know Starkel was 7 of 19 for 41, and Ben Hicks, I can't remember what his completions to incompletions were, but I know he passed for 81 yards. But did a pretty solid job for coming in basically just the fourth quarter, a little bit of the third quarter. But another really concerning thing is when you have had guys show consistency at the quarterback position, outside of Nick Starkel's performance against Colorado State, the guy that's done the best is the one that came in. They came in when the starter wasn't playing well.
Right.
You look at Ole Miss, Nick Starkel came in the second half, got things stirred up. Still didn't really come close to winning the game. I think Ole Miss kind of let off the gas a little bit. And then against A&M, Nick Starkel goes down at the end of the first half. Ben Hicks comes in, and I mean, you got a chance to win it there at the end, as you had talked about before. And so it is really, and again, you got to think about how young this team is. I get it, but the youth does not give any excuse for the loss to San Jose State. No disrespect to San Jose State. They came in, they popped them right in the mouth, but there is just absolutely no excuse why a team, and I'm not trying to pump the SEC arms. I'm just saying a team of that caliber, no Power 5 team should, especially at home, should lose to a team of the caliber of San Jose State.
Right. And I think about that because, I looked over Arkansas's recruiting class. It's been a solid, 23, 25 ranked recruiting class. Had one year, I can't remember what year it was actually 45th. I think that was the last year that Brett Bielema was there. But you're still talking about, relatively decent SEC Power 5 caliber talent. Just shouldn't be losing to a team like San Jose State, which most Power 5 teams would schedule for homecoming, probably would even pay this team to play, because when you can't fill your schedule, you find a team like San Jose State, pay them $1.5 million to come visit you, and then pretty much play them for homecoming. And then I think about the offensive lineman that you lost, and you talk about SEC Power 5 football. and I look at your recruiting class for 2020, if you know SEC West football, obviously you do, you know that the game is won in the trenches. And so far, I don't see any really surmountable recruits that are coming in to help to help Arkansas in the trenches, especially on the offensive side of the football field. So here's the thing. I think Arkansas is in a position to where, yeah, you have a proud program. You have a program that's actually just really desperate to get this program back on track. Um, you talk about a situation where of the margin of error, you're talking about maybe if they win that game against Kentucky, still be able to hold on to to that recruit that you lost. What does that say for Arkansas moving forward, at least within the next 2 to 3 years?
Well, I think that it's bad because literally within 30 minutes, I don't even know if it was quite 30 minutes that he tweeted out that he was decommitting, and so that's definitely alarming. I mean, I think that was a bigger loss than losing to Kentucky personally.
Exactly, man.
And
Because when you lose again, let's just say, especially since I've started the whole podcasting / YouTube thing, I've started to see that when you lose football games, not only is it a loss in the losers column, but you have these recruits, say for instance, coming into this 2019 Arkansas versus Auburn game. I've stumbled upon some news in 24/7 Sports that says y'all got some guys coming to this particular game. Some recruits, especially the three guys out of Texas, the linebackers who are supposed to be
Memphis, yeah, Memphis
Memphis,
Whitehaven, There's a lot of big time names that are going to be there.
They're going to be there. And then what folks don't understand is when these guys come here, not only are they there for the fanfare, but they're getting a perception of the program. And let's just say if Arkansas lays an egg, which they probably could against Auburn, and lays it in a major way, these guys could, you got one that has already committed, and then you got his buddies coming to visit. Arkansas really has to play a good game against Auburn to really secure the perception to keep these guys so that long term Arkansas can get themselves back on track.
Well, and what scares me the most about that is they have to oversign at linebacker. As good as they did in recruiting last year, they missed out on 3 linebackers that were almost 2 of them were dang near for sure coming. Lost out on all 3 of them. And so they're already thin at linebacker this year. Then you've got Devon McClure that was more of a hybrid player. He was playing safety. They moved him up to linebacker because of the depth issues that they had. He leaves the team on Monday, so you're down another guy.
Oh, my
God. And as you mentioned, Martavius French is already committed right now, which is great and all, but I really feel that they're losing ground on him. And the reason I say that is because he wants to play. So his 2 teammates that you mentioned, Bryson Eason, which is probably if we were going to get 2 out of 3, I would say Bryson Eason and Martavius French are going to be the 2 they get.
Okay.
But the other one is Tremarion McDonald. He's actually committed to Mississippi State right now. Arkansas just offered him last week. So you would think that they could pick up some ground right there with offering those 3 guys because they clearly want to play together. Well, Jeremy Pruitt, of course, the head coach of Tennessee, went to one of their games about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So that says a lot during the season. Head coaches don't usually come to games.
No,
so that
sir.
shows how bad they want them. And so they went to their official visit, and they seem to really like it. I mean, I get it. It's home. Anybody that plays on the east side of Alabama, where do they want to go? They want to go to Auburn. If they play on the west side, they want to go to Alabama. And then, of course, Arkansas guys, they want to stay at home too. And so I get that whole standpoint, and I don't have that much of an inside source to say that they've completely lost ground on to where that Martavius French is going to decommit. But it's not looking good, and they've clearly lost some momentum on the recruiting trail. And
oh my God!
The brutal thing about the recruiting trail is once you start to lose momentum, it's dang near impossible to get it back. And so I'm kind of sweating a little bit about it. And then the last thing about that, Mark Smith, one of our, I think he's our safeties coach. So we got a corners coach, Ron Cooper, and then Mark Smith is a safeties coach. He's a big time recruiter for Texas as well. And both of those guys, him and Ron Cooper, both said they'd like to sign up to 5 or 6 defensive backs. Well, they had one in Greedy Vance that was out of New Orleans, and actually the same high school that Devin Bush went to, the one that I mentioned that left on Monday, another one of the 2 that left on Monday. Well, he decommits, and so you're back down to 0 defensive backs, and you're trying to sign 5 or 6. It's just, I've seen a lot of crazy things happen between the football season and signing day, but I'm not holding my breath for any miracles right now.
It's getting crunch time for Arkansas, especially when it comes to the recruiting. I looked over their 2020 class. Not a lot of meat as far as high end 4-star recruits, but we won't get too far into recruiting because because that's one of my favorite parts of this whole thing,
Yeah.
because I know how impactful recruiting can be, especially in the SEC when you're battling in the SEC West against Auburn, Alabama, LSU, and all of those, and those different teams. So here's the thing. Well, let's get back to X's and O's and this particular game against Auburn coming up this weekend. Auburn coming in town, obviously an 11 o'clock game. One of the things that I think about is the fact that Auburn, has struggled against SEC teams who haven't won SEC games in a while. As a matter of fact, Tennessee, they were looking at that game as a possibility to get back on track. But Tennessee comes in 3 turnovers later, gets one of their biggest wins in recent history in the SEC. How do you feel about Arkansas's probability of possibly doing that? Now, before you answer that question, I really like Rakeem Boyd.
I'll start with Rakeem. I've said the other night that Rakeem Boyd is actually I've been watching Razorback football heavily. So I was born in 1990, and as early as I can remember, I've watched this team. And there was a guy named Madre Hill in the mid 90s that he was just an absolute legend and would have been probably a long-term NFL running back had he not busted up his knees. But I would say probably Darren McFadden and then maybe Madre Hill or Rakeem Boyd behind Darren McFadden is the best running back that pound for pound, that I have seen come through Arkansas. Now, he doesn't have the stats that Rakeem I'm talking about. He doesn't have the stats that
I love his skill set, though.
Yeah, like that Felix Jones or Peyton Hillis or who is Fred Talley, Alex Collins. I mean, the list. That's one thing Arkansas has had is some really good running backs over the years. And behind Darren McFadden, I think I'd put Rakeem Boyd. I've loved him since he was at Independence Community College. I sort of remember him when he was coming out of high school. Of course, he didn't have much luck at A&M. But in terms of the game overall and Arkansas hopefully coming out wanting to win, because we've seen too many times that they've had their chances at home against a team that is far superior than them and they just don't show up. Well, I think that honestly, I trust them more to show up for this game than I do for the coaches to put them in the right position. And the reason I say that is because there was multiple times that, well, for instance, right before halftime against Kentucky, they had 55 seconds left with 2 timeouts, and they just played conservative and basically tried to get to the half. I don't know why they weren't trying to take a shot downfield. Now, granted, Nick Starkel probably should not have been in the game at that time. Might be why Chad played it conservative. But the biggest thing for me is John Chavis, one of the most historic names in terms of defensive coordinator in the SEC. Maybe the most, if you look at all time when he was at Tennessee and LSU, just the success that he had there. As successful as he's been throughout his career, you can't figure out how to stop a four-string converted wide receiver at quarterback. No disrespect to Lynn Bowden. He is a great athlete, played an incredible game. But you knew he was going to be running the whole time. Why did you not load the box up and force him to throw? He threw, I think it was 11 passes, and then he rushed for 200 yards. That's just baffling to me. That's bad coaching, and I don't think that a lot of times that they've had these players prepared. And there's nothing more that I want than the Razorbacks to win every single game. I've watched them.
Right.
I've watched them last year when they were 2-10. They possibly could do that again this year, but I am extremely disappointed. Just like a lot of the fans, I think that this coaching staff, as of right now, is showing in some ways that they might be in over their heads. And I hope that eventually they can get it turned around, because you must recruit Texas very, very hard and successfully in order to be successful at the University of Arkansas. And this staff has the ability to do that. They've done it on their recruiting trail, even though they've lost some ground now. But I'm telling you, I don't think that Chad's going to get fired regardless of what happens. Maybe if he loses out, that would be including to Western Kentucky and Ty Story, his former quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think he's going to be there through 2020. There'll be some coaching changes for sure. But man, I don't know. I don't know if I would have the guts to stay and try to get another year in if he is to lose out. I just don't know how I could personally do it.
And when you talk about the SEC, it's all about you got to win games. Gus Malzahn obviously on the hot seat, even at 5-1 in the middle of the season with everything ahead. But you got to think about the fact that Auburn has LSU, Alabama, and Georgia ahead. But I, for one, Vernon speaks for us, Auburn, am not looking past the Arkansas Razorbacks because I've seen Auburn in this position before. Like I said before, you look at Tennessee from last year. Everybody's like, hey, this is the game that Auburn gets back on track. But like you said before, it's not about the coaches at this point. It's about the will of the players to win this game. I think Arkansas has the players in place. If they can put things together in an 11 o'clock game, catch Auburn napping, if you drag Auburn into the third quarter, considering the fact you got a true freshman quarterback, Auburn still hasn't solidified their identity offensively. We're talking about the possibility of a team that pushed Texas A&M to the limit, pushed Kentucky to the limit. There is nothing to say that they can't push Auburn to the limit. Although I think one of the biggest keys to this particular football game is you got to look at the Auburn defense, that defensive line, the upgrades at the middle linebacker and outside linebacker for the Auburn Tigers. I think they're going to give Raheem Boyd and whoever is the quarterback some trouble. So it's going to be an interesting game for the Auburn Tigers and Arkansas. A nice crossroad. You think Arkansas got these guys coming recruiting wise, and you definitely want to make a good impression. Although I don't think these recruits expect to win this particular game against Auburn, but they want to see something. They want to see something perception wise to say, hey, you know what? I see some promise in this particular Arkansas team. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. That's kind of how everybody, like fans and committed recruits and just targeted recruits in general, regardless of how you look at it. I think that most people realistically that have any kind of tie to this program, that's what they've wanted. Like, for instance, right. I said that they were not going to win more than I had them winning all their non-con games, which they've obviously not done that. They lost to San Jose State, and then still
I was disappointed in that one, honestly.
Yeah,
I was also disappointed in the fact that they allowed Portland State to push them a little bit further than they should have as well.
Yeah, and of course that the Portland State, I think that people as time goes on, they'll probably not remember that as much. But it doesn't matter what Chad does from here; he's always going to be remembered as the coach that lost not just to San Jose State, but also he's in his, what is it? I guess 18 games at this point. He's lost to 3 group of 5 teams. Colorado State last year, and got trounced by North Texas at home last year.
Yeah, I remember that one. It wasn't that the one where they had the fake punt and all that craziness going on.
That was it, and it was on Good Morning America. Yeah, just try living in Texas, being a Razorback fan after that one.
Oh my God,
going viral all season. It was quite interesting, but I think that realistically, that most people know that you're probably not going to beat Auburn. You're certainly not going to beat Alabama. You're definitely, especially with the way LSU
that stretch doesn't look good for Arkansas.
Not at all.
No.
And the only game that I could see them possibly getting, besides maybe Western Kentucky, is if they somehow get it together and they can make Mississippi State's a little bit
they're shaky right now.
So that may be it. I don't see them beating Missouri. I thought that was just going to be a team that really had nothing
Missouri
to play
might
for.
beat Georgia while y'all playing, but that's a whole nother video.
And you know what's crazy about that is no matter what happens, they're not going to the postseason. So hats off to them because with their bowl ban. Hats off to them for the way they've been playing. I certainly don't see Arkansas beating them when they come to Little Rock the day after Thanksgiving at the end of the year. So I think really at this point, yeah, you just want to see them compete, and it's going to be tough, as you mentioned. I mean, I think Derek Brown's the best player in the country. I think he's the best player in the country overall. I mean, offense and defense. Just the way that he played. I mean, you look at him when he returned that fumble, he was looking like Jerome Bettis running down the field. And that guy is just an insane athlete. If I'm an NFL team, he's definitely going to be a top 5 pick. But I think that he is the best player in the country overall right now. And that defensive line, I can't remember the guy's name that for you guys he's leading in sacks, but he's a monster as well. I mean, the whole entire D line.
Marlon Davidson.
Yes, Marlon. And
I'll tell you what, you talk about Derek Brown, and coming into this season, we thought that Auburn would have one of the better defensive lines in the country, and they've lived up to the bill because if you look at the SEC, each week it has been an Auburn defensive lineman that has been the SEC Player of the Week. And, I don't think it will be anything different coming into the Arkansas game. No disrespect to Arkansas, but I think these guys are playing on a high level. They played well against Florida. And this will be a pivotal game for the Auburn defense, especially I'm looking at the secondary. I want to see how the secondary performs against Arkansas moving forward going into the LSU game. Of course, we're not looking past Arkansas because this is a game that in the past that I keep bringing up the Tennessee game. I keep bringing up other games to where Auburn is vulnerable in this game. I believe from a personnel standpoint, Auburn should win this game. At the same time, you still can't look over any team in the SEC, especially a team like Arkansas, who has a lot of pride. They're playing at home this particular weekend. And, they got some guys coming recruiting wise that are going to be looking at the perception of this program. And I think Arkansas will lay it all on the line in this particular game. Cal, I definitely appreciate your time tonight. We're talking Cal Sutherland. And now tell the crowd here where they can find you and your podcast, because I've been thoroughly impressed. I looked over all of your stuff. I looked over your stuff on NMDTV. Then I got nosy and really started looking at you, and you really know what you're talking about. Tell the folks out here where we can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me. I'm on Twitter at Tex Hogs. I also am on Facebook and Instagram. I'm not quite as active on there just because the main interaction that I do with people is on Twitter. So
Okay.
TexHogs. And then you can find the podcast. It's the same name, Tex Hogs. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and as of yesterday, we are now on iHeartRadio. So
Oh, wow.
you can
Okay.
find it on there. And so yeah, man. I mean, I've had some pretty good guests on there. If you're a Last Chance U fan, I've had Brittany Wagner, the academic advisor from seasons 1 and 2 that a lot of people came to love, and then also from seasons 1 and 2, I had Marcus Wood, the offensive coordinator. That was Buddy Stevens' offensive coordinator on there. They kind of give some in-depth about some of the behind-the-scenes stuff on the show, and had an author, Michael Weinreb, on. So there's a couple of good episodes in there too. But some of those you have to find on SoundCloud. I'm not on there anymore. That's where I originally started. But
Okay.
but you can find it. You can just about it anywhere that you can listen to your podcast. You can find me. So
Man, I definitely appreciate you tuning in, coming in to visit us tonight here on Vernon Speak Sports Auburn. Now, I got to put you on the spot, just like I did my guy from Florida a couple of weeks ago. You got to give me a prediction, man, of this Auburn and Arkansas game from your vantage point, based on everything you know about Arkansas, everything you know about Auburn. Give me a numerical prediction as to how you think this game will go.
Well, real quick, I'll say I think that the key for Arkansas is John Chavis. Like I said, he's had pretty good success against Gus Malzahn offenses in the past, and I think really just getting the pressure on Bo Nix. I mean, I know you guys took a real big hit losing Boobie Whitlow, and so you're going to be possibly, I know, starting a true freshman at running back, or Cam Martin. I can't remember exactly who it's going to be starting,
Right.
but Bo Nix, he's a very talented kid, got a great future, but definitely has shown he's vulnerable. He's young. He's going to make freshman mistakes. That's going to happen. So I think that's the key to it. But at the end of the day, I just think Auburn's too talented, got too much speed, too great on defense, especially across the front four. And I'm going to go, I'll say 38. I'll say 38-21. I think that the Arkansas does show some fight, but either way, Gus is not going to run the score up on Chad. They've been friends for quite some time. I mean, Gus might be just the reason that Chad is in college football. So they go back way far, and he's not going to run the score up on his buddy.
I tell you what, Cal Sutherland has said it here, 38-21. I think Rakeem Boyd scores 2 of those. I'm a big fan of Rakeem Boyd and with the Arkansas Razorbacks. Definitely appreciate Cal Sutherland coming over here with us out of Tex Hogs, man, the podcast. You got to go ahead and subscribe in any way you can to his work. Now, we're going to end this thing, man. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast talking Auburn football. Go ahead and like this video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speak Sports Auburn. And check my man Cal out over at Sutherland, out at Tex Hogs. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.